We were speaking yesterday about names of people in the American football professional draft, and we spoke about a chap called Tanc. We thought, gee, Tanc's a pretty good name if you're going to play American football. And someone rang in and said there's a famous Australian Tanc, a Bondi boy now in the United States who holds a world record. Tanc's on the line now. How are you going, Tanc?
Good, mate. How are you?
Very well, thank you. You hold the world record for the longest distance swum underwater on a single breath. How far did you go?
I swam 218 metres. It's actually a national record.
My apologies, 218 metres. Are you in the United States pursuing this as a career?
I am an actor by trade, but yes, I am in the US, and I've got the US Nationals coming up in 3.5 weeks.
And so when you're talking about people who do this as a serious sport, how does one train oneself to swim a distance like that? How long did it take you to do the 218 metres underwater?
218 usually takes you about 3 minutes 30. I think in that record swim I did in 3:21, which is a little quicker than it should be, but that's probably down to nerves. Lots of things you can do for training.
Yep.
It's a lot of meditation, relaxation, a lot of swimming, and a lot of yoga.
We should point out when we discuss this that you take this very seriously as a sport and train for it, and we should point out that it is a potentially very dangerous activity to hold your breath for extended periods of time underwater. We've seen people dying. A young man died last month from what's called a shallow water blackout. So we should stress that you are, professional's not the word, but qualified to do this and take your training very seriously, and people should not attempt to replicate what you've done. But when you take it, do you take in a breath? Do you take in a large amount of oxygen into your mouth and just slowly release it into your lungs, or do you just take a full breath and not need another one for 3 minutes plus?
Yeah, I basically, you're right. I just take a big breath, and then the idea is that your blood has got the maximum amount of O2 saturation, and then it's about conserving that O2 as much as possible and relaxing as much so that you're not burning through it. Obviously, if you were to hold your breath and run up and down a flight of stairs, you'd need to breathe pretty quickly. But with us, it's about swimming in a very controlled and steady fashion, and just going as far as we can.
And when you're in the middle of the event, what's the split between mental and physical for achieving elite performance in something like this?
I'd say once you're at that level, probably 70% of it's mental. It's a long time underwater. You're on your own. You're left to your own thoughts, and a lot of things are going on, especially as CO2 is building up in your system. I have this period in about the middle of the swim, which I call the zone of doubt, and that's where I'm just saying, today's not the day. I want to come up. I'm not feeling good. And if I can usually talk myself out of that phase, in the last third, I come strong. So, it's just about, you're right, it's about mental toughness for the most of it.
It's interesting. Often when you speak to people who do something at the levels of the very edges of human endurance, they have those sort of mantras that they've run through with themselves beforehand, and they've told themselves effectively, I know I'm going to get into a stage where my mind's trying to play tricks on me. When that happens, this is what I'll do, this is what I'll say to myself. So you almost accustom yourself in advance to the tricks your mind's going to attempt to play on you, which is quite a reasonable thing for your mind to attempt to do when you're trying to swim 200 metres plus underwater.
It's spot on, mate. It's exactly what I do. I pre-visualise the entire swim, and I find those points where I'm going to doubt myself, and I acknowledge them. It's almost like I have a road map, and there are guys on the side of the street with little signs saying, okay, you can't do it. And when I get to that point, I go, oh, hey, mate, there you are. All right, see you later. I'll keep swimming.
I knew I'd see you at this stage of the journey, and you wave it and move on. I'm talking with Tanc Sade. He's currently sitting in traffic in LA. He's going to be competing soon in the National Championships of Underwater Swimming for the United States. He's an elite athlete, trains very hard for what he does, and I can't stress the importance of not attempting to do anything like what Tanc does unless you've trained quite seriously and are a specialist in the field. If I was to rock up to these national championships, Tanc, and meet a representative sample of people who do this at a serious level, are there typical people that do this sort of event? Is there a typical, personality type?
That's a good question. I think they're quite honestly probably the most lovely people I've ever met. Very calm, usually very gentle. Obviously athletic. It's a great sport in that it has a great mix of men and women. Women's targets are pretty close to men's; they're not that far behind.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a very social, peaceful, calm environment. And we are competing at an elite level, but we're also competing against ourselves. So it's one of those sports where you know what you're getting into, and it's battling against your own inner demons. So we come together in that sense.
Lovely to speak with you, Tanc. Turns out there's more than one elite athlete around the world named Tanc. You might even bump into the guy who's just been drafted into the NFL and have a bit of a Tanc and Tanc chat. Best of luck in all your endeavours, Tanc Sade.
Thanks, mate.